Today, we sit down with the man who stopped two of the most terrifying serial killers in American history. The detective who cracked the Hillside Strangler. The legendary Frank Salerno is with us today.
He followed the bodies, the clues, the lies, and uncovered the truth behind one of the most terrifying killing sprees in history. Los Angeles has seen its share of monsters, but two of the worst were the Hillside Stranglers. A case so dark, so twisted, it changed the way America understood serial killers.
The Hillside Strangler has so many layers.
We refer to them as copycats that occurred during that time, but the media glommed onto that and they just ran with it.
Two bad dudes, man, that this guy knows all about. The kill house, the dump sites, the break and the arrest, the prosecution, the longest trial in California history.
Exact same ligature marks on the wrists, the ankles, and the throat. It looks like they came out of a Xerox machine. You start visualizing it in your mind, you start building, oh, the victim was placed, what happened here.
The authority figure, that's the thing. The killers, they always try to build that trust, fake badges.
Because there's no clues on these, right? Never fingerprints or anything that you can really run with.
He said, let me tell you what I've got.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Tom Zenner. This is Tom Zenner Scandal. This is 1 Degree of Scandalous with the one and only Kato Kaelin.
I love it.
And Kato, you're sitting next to a legend. I'm going to shake his hand. Detective Frank Salerno, who has done so much amazing work for this city, this county, and this country. And he's here with us today. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tom said, heck of a legend. I'm going to go even further. Hell of a legend. I'm going to use a dirty word.
You know what, Frank? There's not enough praise for you. You've heard it your whole life, so we don't have to do this and tell you something you already know. But it is unbelievable, and our audience is so excited because we've been teasing this for a while. And this is one of the most famous serial cases or crime stories of all time. True crime stories, the Hillside Strangler. It has so many layers. Kato and I visited a lot of the sites that you obviously went to investigate these crimes. Does it seem like it's been 47 years almost, or 48, almost a half century?
In some ways it does, in some ways it doesn't. As I said earlier, I told my partner, Gil Carrillo, when we were doing the Stalker case, I says, cases like this take on a life of their own. They never go away. They seem to just live forever. Here we are 47 years later, and we're still talking about it.
Well, you know,
people are still interested.
Yep.
It's the more things change, the more they remain the same. But it's because of so much media, so much other things. Hulu, MGM, everybody does series on this. Amazon. So, like you said, it makes it seem like it was just yesterday, but it's 47 years ago.
The other amazing thing to me is traveling through my later years is run into people. And how many people follow true crime? It surprises you that watch these documentaries, and there's plenty of them out there.
And they're so well done. I mean, in this day and age, and you have a new one that's going to be coming out in January for MGM, so we'll promote that.
That's true.
But you know what? I also think the thing about these stories is LA, the backdrop, Sunset Boulevard, everybody comes here, acting, Hollywood, and then the sadistic nature of these killers and the volume of it. You know, all these serial killers running around at the same time. So you put all that in a pot. You grew up here in LA,
right?
And then you had a hand in solving, of course, the Night Stalker, which is going to be another episode, but two of the biggest ones of all time.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, particularly with the Strangler case, is the first few victims came out of Hollywood, okay? So the media latched onto that. And then there was this misconception early on that it involved prostitutes and street hookers and things like that. Well, the first victim, Yolanda Washington, she was a streetwalker. But there were some, we refer to them as copycats that occurred during that time, particularly 3 of them. 2 of the 3 were streetwalkers that happened. They weren't part of the series, but the media glommed onto that, and they just ran with it. And it just took a life of its own.
Yeah, because they can be beneficial at times, the media, or, you know, they want to get ahead of its headlines, its viewers, its eyeballs, right? So it's almost sometimes like you have to try to work with them, but they can also be a very big detriment. We can get into that. What do you got, Kato?
I was going to say the same, exactly right, because the media does take over a story, because at the time of the Strangler cases, I was in Wisconsin growing up, and then our family is fixed to the TV watching this and going, my parents going, oh, don't you ever go to California. It's crazy there. But obviously the networks know they get big ratings. They don't care. They don't care about the killings. They care about the ratings. And so that kind of perpetuates everything. You keep watching, and then the killings not just stayed street hookers, as we found out. It was started to become waitresses or dancers that were not part of streetwalkers. But we'll get into that.
And so many layers here that we're going to put together with the legendary Frank Salerno today. So we're going to talk about, the beginning of the nightmare, right? You had multiple jurisdictions involved in this right away. It was Glendale, it was LAPD, until Detective Salerno came on the scene. We're going to go inside the mind of the killers. Two bad dudes, man, that this guy knows all about and all their MO and everything. The kill house that Kato and I visited in Glendale, 703 East Colorado, the dump sites, which of course Frank had to go to and see some of these bodies. The break and the arrest, the prosecution, the longest trial in California history, and then kind of what that crime did for Los Angeles. Right. So we're going to walk through this kind of in that type of pattern here, Frank. But, this thing started out in October of 1977 with Yolanda Washington taken on Sunset Boulevard. Body found a few more days. Did you know about the first murder? Because obviously you came in with a task force eventually, but were you hearing about this? Can you remember anything about the first couple?
No, we were not involved, the sheriff's department, in the first murder whatsoever. It was a body dump. Not that they were that frequent, but it's not unusual in Los Angeles. So we weren't aware of it at the time. We became aware of it after our first victim, which was Judy Miller. Mm-hmm. But we didn't tie it in necessarily, not immediately. Mm-hmm. So.
It's always interesting, Kato, don't you think, too, when we have the great detectives like you in here and we talk about these famous crimes, who gets the crime, the case? You got LA sheriffs, you got individual police departments throughout Los Angeles, you got LAPD, you got the Highway Patrol, you got the U.S. Marshals, you got the FBI. How do the sheriffs get involved in this one?
Well, the way the county is, divided, the major part of it is LA City, but you've got probably 30 some other local police departments, and then you've got the sheriff's department. The sheriff has all the unincorporated area of Los Angeles County. They also at that time had probably 25, 26 contract cities, which they police for. Mm-hmm. So that's how it's determined where the crime occurs or where the victim is found. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the department.
Mm-hmm. And you was to say when the victim is found, I think that's probably the most important thing. The first victim's found at a dump site. No one's thinking serial killer yet. When do you start thinking the dump site is a second one, Judith Miller, 15-year-old, 14-year-old girl? Is that when you start in your mind going, this might be a serial killer?
Well, no. Our first one started really simply. I mean, my partner and I, Ray Stockton, were up for the first murder that came in for the sheriff's department. Okay, we were first in the rotation. About 6 a.m, got a call at home from the homicide desk to say, you've got one. I said, okay, tell me about it. And they tell you the basic details. They said, you got a young, new female who's laying in the front yard up in Alta Terrace in La Crescent area, which is a county area. And the one thing that was said at that time was, it possibly is an overdose. I said, okay. I said, is Ray rolling? He said, yeah. Ray lived further out than I did, so I was the first of the scene. You get up there and you start, you look and see what you have. I contacted the patrol deputy. He tells me what he has. The body is covered with a tarp. Uncover it. It's not an overdose.
Right.
I mean, I don't know where that came from at all, but you immediately see ligature marks on the throat, ankles. Couldn't see the wrist because they were underneath her. So got a murder, okay? So that's where you start. You've got a Jane Doe, very young, okay? We're looking for a starting point. So then you process the crime scene.
Yeah.
So we have got no idea of anything else that's occurred.
It just, because I studied that first killing, Judith Miller, that there was a part that you found something on an eyelid, and the story didn't go on more, because I was like, well, when I was reading about it, I was going with the first killing. And by the way, La Crescenta area is a beautiful area. And what was it? Because that was a big...
Well, the only piece of evidence that we found was a tuft of white fiber on her eyelid. I mean, here was a new body, okay? Nothing else. The ligature marks, obviously, and stuff like that. But the only piece of physical evidence was a little tuft, about as big around as the point of your finger, and that was it. So we recovered that. But a funny story about that is I asked the patrol deputy, I said, where'd the tarp come from? He says, well, the homeowner found her. He covered her with a tarp from the backyard. So we interviewed the homeowner, and where'd the tarp come from? So I cover my children's toys back there. So we went back and looked, and there was stuffed toys that had white fur fiber on it. They had a white cockapoo, little dog, white fur. So we took samples of all that along. We didn't know if that was a transfer onto the body when they covered it with a tarp.
It's crazy, right?
It's
because you're thinking it could be a clue, and then it turns out. But you got to look at everything. You know, the thing that struck me about these two guys is how frequently they killed when they started. Because you get that first one, it's not long before the second one. And then you keep going. Are these guys idiots? Are these guys smart criminals cleaning the bodies? You know, doing some of this stuff. We can get into that. But after you found that first body, you were there. How soon before the next one and things really started amplifying?
Well, we put a teletype out because first thing we did is we researched to see about other dumps, recent dumps, and we came up with Yolanda, Washington, but that didn't quite meet our criteria that we were looking at. All right, we didn't know anything about our victim because she's a Jane Doe, so we don't know if she's some, grade school kid that got taken off the street, she's a working prostitute or whatever. So we put teletype out, nothing. When we found her, there was a trail of ants across her body and across her face and stuff. So we could not put a photograph of her out on the media. So we had a staff artist come in and draw her picture, her portrait. We put that out in the LA Times. We got a hell of a response for the next 5, 6, 8, 10 days. But we never got one that identified her. We got some that came close, and we can discuss that. But so we're going nowhere because we don't have a starting point. Yeah. We don't know where she came from, where she could have been,
right,
where the murder occurred. It didn't happen there.
Right. Hey, Kato, think about it, because like you don't assume, there's no ID. It's not like she has her purse or a wallet. Not only do you not know where she came from, you don't know her name, right? I mean, this makes it so much more complicated, and probably took a little bit longer to figure out how these were all tied in.
It's sort of like going back to square one constantly.
Yeah,
and you got to keep waiting and waiting, and no one identifies the body.
And then most of the victims, if not all, show up when you get there. They're naked, they're nude, right? So is that? At what point are you thinking there's a pattern here? There's something, that is more than just a few random
within
murders?
the first 6 days.
Okay.
I'll tell you what happened is Glendale PD responded to our teletype. They called us and they said, hey, we've got a new case that just occurred. It's a young female found nude up on Chevy Chase Drive in the city of Glendale. She's at the coroner's office. Well, our victim was still there because we don't have her ID'd. So my partner and I, we go to the coroner's office, get a hold of Joe Choi, was one of the pathologist coroners there, and he had done our case. So I said, Joe, there's another one here. So we pulled both bodies out, put them side by side. We uncovered them, okay? as soon as you looked at their victim, Lisa Caston, and our victim, who turned out to be Judy Miller, okay, exact same ligature marks on the wrists, the ankles, and the throat, almost to a point where you could measure them, up from the heel to where it was. It was that close. Dr. Choi made a comment. He's a great guy. He said, looks like they came out of a Xerox machine. And he's, they just were created.
Just
different
so
bodies,
consistently
copy.
similar, right?
different bodies, same exact MO. So right then we knew, hey, we got somebody out there, or more than one, we don't know, that have committed 2 murders.
Did you get the goosebump feeling right there? Because I just did. When he said that, it's a copy. Like, do you get that moment of looking at the 2 bodies that it's exact same, ligature marks, and you're thinking, this is the one person killing.
Well, backing up a little bit at the crime scene at Judy Miller, one of my first impressions was when I took a look at where the body was, how it was placed. I thought it was placed there. I didn't think it was just tossed, okay? Mm-hmm. The other thing was back where her feet were, she was laying in a bed of like ivy. It wasn't ivy, but it was plant material in the front parkway. And it overlapped a small curb. Well, right by her feet, it looked like that plant material had been tufted up. Somebody had tripped over it or caught their foot. So I got this. My impression was she was placed there by 2 people and just put down. So it was just a theory. Yeah. It's just something when you go to a crime scene, you start visualizing it, and you start, in your mind, you start building, how this occurred, how the victim was placed, what happened here, and you just keep it in your mind. You don't make any hard and fast rulings. You keep an open mind. Yep. But it was just a theory on my part.
Yeah, and another thing you can fall back on if you see something on the next one, if there was, and you probably expected there would be at that point.
Yeah, like you said, Tom, with the psychology of the killer, like with the bodies being found, talking about that. Also, they were bathed. Were they not like cleaned up? That the killers had time where you start thinking, boy, if they can be cleaned up, it looked like they were bathed.
Well, that was another thing that occurred. Both victims that we had at that point, that first 6-day period, all right, there was no trauma to the bodies. They didn't look like they put up a fight. There was no defensive wounds. There was no broken nails. There was no trauma at all. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that also really stood out, is that whatever happened, their first contact with a killer was a trusted situation.
Right.
Okay. They trusted the initial contact, and then it got out of hand, and it was too late. Yeah. So that's
an amazing observation.
Building
like for
trust.
us, we're not detectives. We're not trained detectives. You are, but you were young at the time too. Did that kick in then? Because, man, it's a violent death. They strangle her. They're bound. And then autopsy, I'm sure, would show sexual assault. But the fact that there wasn't that resistance, that fight, that they got into a vehicle of someone they thought they knew or trusted, right? So that's something that you can really go on. How crazy is it at this point? Thinking, is there going to be another one? I mean, these guys are sick. Are they going to be doing this on a nightly basis, or just what was that like? Wondering when they would strike again.
I don't know if we gave too much thought about, is there going to be another one? Will there be another one? Hope there'll be another one. You never hope. Yeah. Obviously, you're never going to hope there's another one, give you another shot. But you're thinking too much about what you have and who those killers might be. Where would they be? What kind of a situation where they would trust the individual? Think about it. So they're not, a friend. Now, we don't know who this girl is. We know who this girl is. Were they friends? Did they have common friends? We didn't know. Okay. What's another situation? A clergyman?
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. But we still don't know these 2 people, put them together. The other situation is law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Most people at that time trusted law enforcement, the initial contact, So,
At least respected him and would listen to him. Was that in your mind at that time?
oh yeah,
Okay. That's
yeah. I
amazing.
mean, it was just a matter of, putting it together, and our biggest thing was identifying our victim, and then basing that off of what they had with Kasten. What's the connection? Is there any connection? Okay, and then moving on.
It's the authority figure. That's the thing is with the killers. They always try to build that trust, and then we get into fake badges, and we'll get into all that.
When you sent out the teletype and Glendale got back to you, and then now things are moving, right? Did you take over? Did the sheriff department take over? And then how soon was the task force formed after that?
No, there was no idea of a task force then. I mean, we had two separate cases. Right. We had one agency working one. We had another agency, our agency, working ours. So you're working them individually. But things started happening, pretty quick. We didn't get our girl identified, Judy, for 10 days. Okay? So we're working leads based off our photograph or our portrait that we put in the LA Times and all those responses. That led us to Hollywood, basically, because we started getting anonymous calls about it. That's Judy. No last name. That's Judy. She's from Hollywood. So she's on Sunset Boulevard and all that. Yeah. So it took us to Sunset Hollywood Boulevard, actually. And we spent a lot of time down there till we finally ran into a group of kids that kept saying, that's Judy. Judy who? Right. Okay. They couldn't tell us. Hollywood Boulevard was filled with runaways from all over the United States. I mean, you walk down a street, there were 15, 16, 18, 17-year-old kids from all over, all right? Now, we had one advantage we had, okay, is we had Halloween. That's when the discovery was. So we had a specific date that usually meant something to everybody to pinpoint things when this individual was last seen. That with the kids the kids living on Hollywood Boulevard, that didn't matter much. They didn't know what happened yesterday, 2 hours ago, or a week ago.
And at that point, there wasn't a real fear on Hollywood Boulevard or on Sunset Boulevard either, right? Because none of them knew that maybe this was starting to escalate and there's two already. Yeah, they're no, because that the type of stuff that goes on, they're not thinking about that until maybe a little bit later. There's so many crazy and just coincidences or things had to happen even for the murders to happen. I mean, you got Bianchi coming back from New York, right? From upstairs. Buono was here, and these guys, end up living together.
Well, Bianchi came out here from Buffalo.
Yeah, from New York,
Rochester.
Yeah, and
he moved out here, and this was his cousin, not blood cousin, but cousin, because he had been adopted. So he comes out here just to start a new life, or get away from Rochester or whatever.
Right. Buono was sick. I mean, that guy, obviously involved in other type of sex crimes and whatnot. Did you guys know about him even before this started?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Not at all. He was LAPD. I think all his arrests were, he'd lived in the city mainly and in Glendale. They were mainly LAPD arrests.
That's what this kind of just blows my mind of how Bianchi's coming from Rochester, going to go to Glendale to live with Buono, and how they even, what conversations happen? What could they have? What do they talk? Like, they get girls in the beginning to be like, hookers maybe making money for them, and they kind of bolt, and then they decide, let's kill.
Well, they got into the alcohol business, for whatever reason. Why, I don't know. Okay, because Buono had a pretty good thing going with his upholstery shop. He was well known. He was successful. He did really good work. Bianchi was sort of just flitting around. He didn't have anything.
Right, he's got a place to stay.
He was a salesman of some sort. And I'm not putting down used car salesman, but he was a used car salesman, okay? And he was always looking for something to do somehow. Yeah. Some easy thing.
Right. That means he could talk. He could do the woman, the whole thing. He's got that spiel going on.
And plus, he's easy to manipulate by Buono, right? I mean, Buono could kind of get him to.
Well, there was quite an age difference between them. They're like 20 years difference. You know.
So okay, so then there's two. What happens next?
We got two.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in the first 10 days. Caston's identified. We're trying to identify our girl. We finally get a couple of calls, and we go to Hollywood. We're down on Hollywood Boulevard every night talking to these runaways and stuff. We come across a group of young people that go by Cowboy Dave, Stinky Feet, Char, Witch. That's the name, Youngblood. Those are the names. And they say it's Judy, but they can't tell us anything else about him. Finally, we get a call that said something about she lived in a motel with her parents off of Hollywood Boulevard. All right? Well, one day we're down there. We didn't know where this motel was. We run into a group of kids at a small park up at Yucca and Franklin, maybe, up in that area. And we're showing them our little portrait, and they said, that's Judy. Her parents live in a motel down there. So we go to, and they said, LAPD should know her. Okay. So we go to Hollywood Division, and we run into a female police officer. We show her our little portrait there. And so that's Judy Miller.
Got a
last name.
Yep.
What about her? She's living with her parents down off a small motel off Hollywood Boulevard. I forget the name of the street that it was on. We go down, we find the motel, we knock on the door. A middle-aged woman, Mrs. Miller, answers the door. We explain who we are, what we're doing. We've got an unidentified body we're trying to identify. If maybe you may know something about it. We show her our little drawing. She says, that's not my daughter. I said, okay. When did you last see your daughter? She says, I saw her the day after Halloween on Hollywood Boulevard. She was across the street, and we waved to each other. Now, Judy was a constant runaway, so it wasn't unusual.
Right.
And she had been gone from the parents' place. I said, okay, so you saw her the day after. You're positive? Day after. Well, our victim was dead then, okay? So I asked her another question. What about her teeth? Our victim had really bad teeth. I mean, really bad teeth. There's nothing wrong with her teeth that I remember. I said, okay. So we bow out. We get another call sometime later. And I think it was after we went to LAPD. And we knock on the door again a couple days later. Dad's home. Dad was a security officer, worked everywhere. He wasn't home the first time. Sorry, we're back. Well, we got some more questions to ask you. We show him the drawing. He says, that doesn't look like my daughter. Okay. Mr. Miller, what about your daughter's teeth? Did you ever go to a dentist or anything? He says, yeah, I took her to a dentist once. Really, where at? And he tells us, I think it was in South Pasadena. Gave us the name. We went there. We got her dental charts and x-rays, took them to the coroner's office. Bingo.
Oh.
It's her.
Incredible.
It wasn't 10 days. And Mom insisted. I saw her the day after Halloween.
What made him think that didn't look like her?
Well, in all fairness, the picture of her, we had a picture of her when she was 15, like a school picture. And the drawing, based on what she looked like when we found her, 15-year-old, this one looked like she was 20 years old and walking the streets.
Sure.
Okay? But the biggest thing was the teeth. Mom didn't, and her saying, well, I saw her the day after.
Right. So maybe it's
Halloween.
drugs or something that
Yeah, the
made her teeth
parents
look
were there.
horrible.
Who knows?
But I mean, what a great instinct, and then what a big break, right? So God, how frustrating. A week, you don't know her name now, boom. But then once you've done that, then more bodies, right? Then it starts
After
picking up.
that, then we start getting some more bodies.
Yeah.
And a little pattern developed with that, and that is what we saw with these bodies being dumped. They matched the pattern of Miller and Kasten. They had the ligature marks, exactly the same ligature marks as we were fighting. So we knew we were off and running with some sort of a serial case.
You're also at the mercy of hopefully finding the bodies fast enough after they dump them so they don't decompose or something like that.
Yeah, most of them were found relatively quick. Jane King wasn't. She went missing for a while, where they dumped her off Los Feliz, off the 5 freeway, and she wasn't found right away. The 2 young girls, they weren't found right away when they were dumped. It was sort of a remote place, a place where trash was dumped, but most of them were found relatively quickly.
You know, Tom and I went on these sites, the dump sites, and we were driving, like I said, to all the dump sites, and I go, Tom, one of the is found at Los Feliz off the 5 freeway. I mean, that's a pretty busy. I mean, back then it had to be sort of busy still. So these guys kind of were gutsy of just dropping the body off. It's kind of like
the interesting thing with that case is why there. Did they panic for some reason? Did they see a CHP car on the freeway? They get tired of driving around. Something panicked them to just pull off the freeway there and dump the body.
Well, that's like a mile from the auto upholstery shop where that body's dumped off. Los Feliz and Colorado Street are one's Colorado, then Los Feliz, and it's really close to it. So maybe you're right. Maybe they were lazy. Maybe they're getting caught because that was really close to.
Most of the other dump sites, we could tie Bianchi or Buono too. Okay?
Yeah.
Either they lived near there. Buono had a girlfriend that lived at the end of Alta Terrace, a young girl, where Miller was dumped. He lived on Chevy Chase, where Kasten was dumped. So we could connect him to a number of different locations, but that one we couldn't.
Right. So then you got November, December of 1977. There's more. There's more killing. It's probably taken over your life at this point, right? When did the city start getting freaked out? When was the Hillside Strangler moniker come up with, and when was it kind of all hands on deck where we got to figure this out?
It came up in November. It was sort of the week that was. We sort of termed it when we had so many found. We had Weckler. Then we had the 2 young girls go missing, but no connection at that time. We had King found. We had the 2 young girls then found. That's when the media really took off. They named it. The media always names this series, except in robberies. The FBI always names it robberies. Yeah. But the media names the series, and they named it the Hillside Strangler.
Right.
And that went. And then a task force is formed. LAPD formed a task force, about 40 people. And then it continued to build. That task force went over 100 people.
Yeah. God, it had to be so crazy and frustrating because you have these bodies, the MO similar, right? It's the victims are around the same age, kind of doing the same thing, the way they're being killed. You figure out it's probably 2 people then. And to think, oh my God, where do we go to begin to try to track these guys down? Because there's no clues on these bodies, right? Never fingerprints or anything that you can really run with.
Yeah. The only thing we found on the bodies, with a couple of exceptions, Miller with the tuft of fiber, are the ligature marks. Now, on a couple of the bodies, we find, I think it was Wagner, where they had taped her hands together, or Weckler. One of the 2, getting old. Some of these details.
Well, you got the W part, right?
You start either trying to forget them or you do forget them.
Exactly.
But they taped the hands together and tried to electrocute her. And there was the taping, the backing from the tape, a tuft of fibers was there. So that was recovered at the scene by LAPD, which later turned out to be pretty important because Bianchi told us what they did with each victim when they got to back to Bono's place. They put them in one chair, okay? And we took that chair with a search warrant and processed the chair, and tucked down on the sides of the chair was the same tuft of fibers that came off that victim.
God. Yeah, because you don't think about, I mean, the story's so big, and there's movies and documentaries and books. You don't realize what happened at 703 East Colorado, and the house of horrors that was, and the hell that they put them through. What's ironic is throughout this, you probably drove down Colorado Boulevard a few times.
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, on the Hudspeth case, after we recovered her car and stuff, we had information from her roommate. The last place she was seen was Colorado, okay, and Glendale. They'd wave to each other as they drove off in different directions. So we took a light orange Datsun that she drove. Within a couple of days of the finding her, we put it at Colorado and Glendale. All right, we did it at the time of night, the time of day she was last seen there, and we did a traffic stop on every car that drove by there, and asked them if they had ever seen a car like that when they were driving in the area. First, we asked them, did you drive by here on a certain date? If you did you ever see this car, anything unusual? And the only thing we came up with is a witness, didn't see it there, was driving up Angeles Crest Highway, going home, and an orange Datsun passed her, and a guy was driving it that had a beard on and looked over at her. And we did a composite on that, okay? And later, after Bianchi was arrested up in Bellingham, when Ded Varney and I went up there from LAPD, one of the things we found up there was a fake beard that Bianchi owned.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah.
What a great job by the eyewitness, too, to remember that. And a Datsun isn't that big of a vehicle to get a body in there when they're going to take it away and dump it.
Body was in the trunk.
Wow, that's chilling. Think about it. That's maybe a half mile from the upholstery shop.
Yeah.
Maybe a little further, but it was up Angeles Crest. And it was an area that we tied Bianchi to later on through witnesses that had been up there.
Well, and Hudspeth is the one that went into the shop that was going to get her car done, correct?
No, we don't know what exactly. When she left her roommate, the roommate was going to work, okay? She was going to interview an individual to give dance lessons to. And her thing was, because of the murders that had gotten so much publicity, she wanted to meet him in a public place or a place she felt safe. So we think, our thinking was based on what her roommate said, was she's going there to interview either Bianchi or Buono for dance lessons. She was given private dance lessons.
Wow. And then you got the backstory, too, of Bianchi trying to become a LAPD cop, right? Oh. So some of this is going on. And then after the fact is when you can piece everything together and go back and, develop that whole timeline. But, man, you talked to them. Did they strike you as just sick, sadistic, or was there some intelligence there? Were they, just got off on killing?
Well, I think they got off on killing. There's no two ways about it. Intelligence, I think Bianchi had a certain amount of intelligence, obviously. Yeah. And Buono was street smart. He was a street guy.
Yeah.
He'd had his ins and outs with law enforcement. But, he was an established businessman right there in Glendale. What happened between those two, how those two got together, how their personalities connected, how two people decide, hey, you know what? Whatever they said to each other, this sounds like fun. Let's go out and pick up broads and kill them.
Yeah, that's a weird side hustle.
What kind of a conversation?
I know. How does it evolve till it gets to that point? Hey, I got an idea. We'll get a fake badge and let's get them in.
Yeah.
They do.
Slowly, one step at a time probably.
Or they do that first killing and they enjoy it so much because they go crazy in November of 1977. They go crazy. That's when they're doing all this killing. So it's got to be this conversation of, hey, we can outsmart the cops. I got a business that I run. I'm legitimate, and I just like.
No, that's
like
a good
said,
point.
You talked, you talk to these guys, and I was thinking that when you actually talk to these guys too, they're going, oh, hey, Salerno, Paisan, and Bianchi, Buono, and they're probably trying to get on your side.
Well, Buono never talked to us really. Okay.
Yeah.
We had one my partner and I, Pete Finnegan at the time, because my original partner retired, Ray Stockton, and then Pete Finnegan came on board with me, and we ran with the case. But one time we had him under surveillance. We had taken him out of his house, and we'd served a search warrant on his house. This was before his arrest. And we wanted to process his house and take certain items that we found, fingerprints and all that. Well, part of the process was ninhydrin, a chemical agent you do the spray on the whole house, okay? And it takes 24 hours or so for it to come out.
You think you see blood spatter?
So, so we didn't want him in the house. So we put 2 detectives there, okay? We put him in a motel or hotel. All right, he could run his business, but they were there to maintain the integrity of the search. Well, during that search, okay, while we had him out of his house, okay, he got a threatening phone call apparently on the business phone. Somebody said they were going to come and shoot him. So he tells the 2 detectives, hey, I just got a threat. So they call us, say, hey, Buono just came out and told us somebody's going to come by and shoot him. So we rolled by. Pete and I said, let's go talk to him. So
at the shop, at the upholstery shop?
At the shop, yeah.
It's great.
So we get there, we talk to the 2 detectives. They're fine. They don't have any problem with what's going on. We call him out, and we're in the driveway, and we're talking to him. And Pete and I had talked about this before. Let's take a shot at him, okay? That time, Bianchi had already come forward, was talking about him being connected.
Up in Washington.
Yeah, so we knew, he was a crime partner. So we said, Angelo, your partner's in jail. He's going to throw up all over you, you got first shot. Why don't you take it? All right? Tell us what happened. He looks at us. He says, you guys, he says, if you 2 do your job, you'll clear me. And that was it.
Wow.
You're clear
the balls on this guy, the confidence, right? It almost makes you think, they thought this. So much of it seems random, and so much of it seems thoroughly thought through and strategic, but he's fearless. That's one of it. Was there a point as these bodies kept coming, November, December, early part of the year, that you thought, we're not going to solve this? I mean, are we going to find these killers?
I never had that feeling.
Okay.
And with each case, it seemed like, we're getting closer, but then in a few days, we're not any closer. When the Martin case occurred, that's the young lady that from the out-call service in December, that one, based on what was going on, figured, we're getting close. I think this is the one that was going to break it. And after a short period of time, anything or everything we had from that case petered out. And it was, here, we're back to square one.
That's a horrible feeling for you.
What's that?
It's got to be the most horrible feeling for you, back to square one.
It is. You go back to square one, and it's like starting all over again. What do we have? What?
God, and that's so frustrating.
We don't have anything, really. What we had, though, is we had some descriptions by then, okay? We had a description of 2 people who'd taken off Wagner in a police-type stop. That verified our theory of what was going on, how the girls were being picked up, all right, on that.
Wow, you gotta use what you have, which isn't much, and then rely on great police skills, intelligence. That's why the job you did is so amazing. You think, why didn't they talk about this, or how did the word not get out, or maybe brag or something? But they had to protect each other. If one guy said something, the other one was going down, and I'm sure Buono was threatening Bianchi as well. I don't know that for sure, but what do you think led to the split? where Bianchi goes up to Washington?
Well, I think the reason he went up there is because he followed his girlfriend who had just had their baby. Okay, and that kid, that baby, and that girlfriend drug him up to Washington. Okay. All right? I'm not aware of anything that occurred between the two. I've never heard any rumors to that effect. Nobody's ever talked about it. Buono never talked to us about anything. So I think he followed her back home. That was her home up in Bellingham.
And then when he's in Bellingham, he just decides he's got a newborn, he's got a wife. He decides he's got that he needs to kill, and he ends up killing 2 more women.
Well, he hasn't satisfied his urge to kill yet.
Right.
I mean, that's the biggest thing that's driving him.
Yeah.
His urge to kill and get away with it.
Yeah.
And is his wife, girlfriend, wife that he had the kid with? Does she have any idea this is going on? You obviously interviewed her too.
But he also got busted pretty quickly up there in Washington.
He did.
Yeah,
he did, because the scam he laid up there to the 2 young ladies that he ended up murdering was telling them, this is really important. Okay, you're gonna house sit. Nobody can hear about it. You can't tell anybody what you're doing. And he laid some story on them about nobody can know where you're at because of the house it is, the people live there, blah, blah, blah. Well, one of them told, boyfriend, said, yeah, I'm going to do this house sitting job. I got it through this guy,
security guy,
Kenny,
yeah.
who he knows, who he knew of. So that's how that case broke up there.
Wow. Is that amazing? You get a quick break there, and boom, everything starts happening after that.
Because of that.
Yeah, and describe what it was like getting the call. If you got it or somebody in the sheriff's department told you when Washington comes down and says, hey, we got this guy, we found a California ID, right? And kind of the same MO of what you guys were dealing with.
I'll tell you, well, I was off that day. It was a Saturday. And my team was working, the homicide team I work with. We were broke into four 12-man teams at that time. And so I was off, but my team was working. Washington had their case. They had him in custody. They called down because he had a California driver's license. They called LAPD, okay? You think of Los Angeles, you think of LAPD. Right. It's a weekend. Nobody's in at homicide. They call Glendale PD for some reason. Nobody's in. It's Saturday. They will call the sheriff. They call the sheriff's department. The sheriff's homicide's on 24/7. And they happened to talk to my team, a team member, Louis Danoff. And they ran this case by him. They said, hey, we got a double murder up here. Got a guy in custody. Got a California driver's license. We'd like you to run a background and get back to me. And Louis said, okay, I'll do it. No mention of the hills.
Wow.
No mention of that at the
just
time.
wanted California information.
They wanted a background on this guy. Louis gets on the computer. First off, just his DMV background, okay? Louis found out that he had lived on Garfield, across the street from Cindy Hudspeth, next door to Weckler. We never had that connection before. He had a prior address on Tamron. That's where Martin was called to. Okay, same address. All right? Mm-hmm. So he'd been an LAPD reservist. Anyway, he calls back and he says, hey, yeah, have you ever heard of, we got a case going down here called the Hillside Strangler. The detective he was talking to said, I'd never heard of it. But anyway, he says, your guy is connected to our cases just by his addresses alone. He says, I'll have somebody call you back. So Louis called me at home. And I can remember it. I was out in the garage. And he says, Frank, the old same thing. You sitting down? That's when and we used to get that a lot.
Yeah.
When you're working a case, a lot of publicity. No, I'm standing. What's up, Louis? He said, well, let me tell you what I've got. And he started reading it out. He knew the connection. I said, you're shitting me. I says, give me the guy's number. So I call him back up. I says, hey, I'm going to go check some stuff out. I'll call you back. I called Dud Varney. And not at that point. I went downtown. I pulled, LAPD provided us with a printout of all their clues. Okay. And we pulled that. We started looking. Bianchi is listed, I think, 5 times as a suspect. So I called Varney, Dud Varney, up at home. He was my counterpart at LAPD. I said, Dud, I said, we got something going here. Briefly told him, I says, could you go down to your office, pick up those clue packages, and meet me? He says, done. And he comes, he meets me with the packages. We start going through them, and it's like, wow, you know, LAPD reservist, wannabe reservist. That gives us our cop, little cop angle, okay? We've got all those addresses that connect him. We said, we're off and running. So I called the detective back up. I says, hey, we're going to fly up there. I said, what are you guys doing on your case? He said, we're going to serve a search warrant. I said, when? He said, well, maybe later tonight. This was Saturday. I said, could you hold off on that till we get there? And they said, yeah. I said, we'll be there tomorrow. So Dud and I flew up to Bellingham. My partner, Pete Finnegan, got a hold of Dud's partner, Bob Grogan, and they were going to handle what happened here, and then Dud and I flew up there. And that's how that came about.
So are you thinking when you're going to be flying up there, you're saying to yourself, we've got the Hillside Strangler, or are you thinking, we've got the Hillside Strangler, but there's one more?
I was thinking, no, well, that's a good question, okay? At that point, I'm thinking, we've got somebody connected to these cases. See where this takes us.
Right.
And it took us right away, okay? Because once we got up there, they were very open with us, what they had. They showed us their whatever reports they had. We eventually went to their coroner's office and looked at the saw the similar. We went to where the search warrant was served. They served the search warrant. Kelly Boyd, the mother of Bianchi's child, was there. So Dud and I sat down and we spoke with her for a couple of hours. The only person she came up with who is closest to Kenneth Bianchi was a guy named Angelo Buono, his cousin. And we went around and around about that. And so we had a name that he connected to him. I called my partner back in L.A., Pete Finnegan, says, Pete, here's where we're at. Here's what I come up with. I got a name. It's funny you got Angelo Buono's name because I've got it down here off one of the clue packages, and I've been out and interviewed one of the individuals that called in, and it was Mrs. Kellison, and Buono is Bianchi's. They're like this, okay. So we're off and running. We've got a second guy, and within 3 days of that, we get the magic phone call from Detective Stan White that connects us to David Wood, the attorney, who turns us on to Becky Spears, 15 years old, who's turning tricks for Bianchi and Buono on an outcall service. That leads to Sabra Hannon, who's another one turning tricks. Now we've got them committing crimes together, and we're off and running.
It's crazy because you spend months with nothing and trying to find something, and then all of this. And now you got to track it, trace it down. You know you're close, right?
It's like the
hunt
lit.
is on. You want to you got to be careful, make no mistakes, and then you got to like kind of get in the minds of these guys. So Bianchi's up there talking. You go find Buono. When you come down, do you come back to LA? Do you come and go? Do you eventually meet with Buono quickly?
Pardon me?
Do you meet with Buono quickly when you get back? Okay.
No, but Pete and Finnegan and Grogan went out and talked to him.
Okay.
They had a short conversation with him. Just, tell us about Kenneth Bianchi, your cousin's up there, blah, blah, blah. Nothing about what you've done, who you are, advise you of your rights. No accusations. But we immediately put him under surveillance because he's a crime partner. Right. and then it goes from there.
When the detectives talk to Buono, when the three guys are talking to them, are they so seasoned that they know this guy is full of shit? That they're going, this is the guy. And, they're talking to him. They're not accusing him of anything, but do they got that thing like, this guy is just full of it?
Who, the Buono?
Buono, yeah.
Buono was more of a street person. He's not trying to bullshit you or anything. He's pretty straightforward as far as, this is all I got to say. I don't know anything about him. Yeah, he lived with me for a while. He may have even said he kicked them out, for whatever reason. He's tired of his bullshit, and he moved, and that was it. So it was a real short conversation, no accusations, because there's nothing to accuse him of. We're not interested in him running an outcall service at that point, just to accuse him.
But he knows his time's coming. If they've got, he's got that. He's got to be thinking, they're on to something. They would not be talking to me right now. And he's playing it so
well,
cool.
Especially with Bianchi arrested, and he probably is worried about what he's going to say. But you mentioned he's street, right? He's tough. He's not going to reveal anything. Plays it cool. Hard to give to tell from him. When was the first time you walked into 703 East Colorado as a crime scene, where you go in there where you know what happened, or you believe you know what happened?
It was probably when we did the search warrant.
Okay.
First search warrant.
Could you feel it? Could you sense evil had been there?
I don't know so much about feeling, because see, he had cleaned. He was. We didn't come up with any fingerprints. Not a fingerprint was lifted in that place with an anhydrous process. Okay, we felt good about taking the chair, because by that time Bianchi had told us about the chair. So we had the chair where the victims had been placed. All right. The place was pretty sterile. Okay, it wasn't something you walk into like a typical crime scene,
right?
Where you've got you've got evidence of a struggle. It just looked an ordinary.
Plus, no cameras, no video to look at,
no nothing,
no ropes left behind, no nothing.
But when he's talking to the three detectives beforehand, after they leave, don't you think that he's going immediately? I'm cleaning this place up.
Yeah, I would. Normally that's what you would think would happen, but we're not talking about normal people here.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. It's the same thing with somebody that commits suicide, and you start talking. You're talking where you find them sometimes on the top of a hill. Yeah. You're not talking about a person that's thinking like
nothing logical.
A normal person would think.
Gosh, you think about this, and so many victims. And you got the two guys probably in your mind, but there's really not that much evidence. I mean, is that why you had to kind of do a slow roll, not rush it, that kind of thing? You go into his shop, the upholstery shop, and there's no clue, there's nothing really there. So is that tough? Because you know how many people have died, you know how intense this is, the media's everywhere. We want to get these guys, but you have to train yourself to kind of move methodically at that point?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not slam, bam, thank you, ma'am type thing.
Yeah, it's not an episode that has to wrap up in 42 minutes.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
You got to give time for the commercials, but you just walk your way through it, take it step by step. And this is a case that took time to develop based on, talking with the two young girls, Becky and Sabra, following up on all the information they gave us, corroborating eventually when Bianchi decided, hey, I'm going to do this multiple personality thing, try and get out of this bullshit, right? They started sending videotapes down to us. And he immediately, during those videotapes, implicates Buono. So we got, we feel, a known killer implicating his partner finally. So that's another angle that comes in with Buono. We know we're looking at the twosome. But then now we're fighting, wait a minute, he's going to pull off some psychiatric bullshit, and we're gonna lose this thing.
He didn't come to Hollywood for his acting, right? He tries this double personality thing. You can see right through it. Then he tried 3. Then he tried to add a third personality into this thing, I think.
His ego got carried away.
Yeah.
And it got carried away in such, he started naming them, okay? the various psychs would ask him, especially Allison, or one of the two that had been provided by the court. Who am I talking to? And he'd say, this is Billy. Who am I talking to this time? This is Steve. And they go on. Who am I talking? Today, I'm talking. One time they're talking, he's talking all this bullshit about what happened and all that. And the doctor says, who am I talking to? He says, this is Steve. Steve who? You got a last name? And he says, Walker, Steve Walker. Steve Walker, okay, so we got Steve Walker. Who's Steve Walker, right? But we've got a last name. The big break came as far as beating that psychiatric defense, came when we got a call from Bellingham saying that Kelly Boyd, the girlfriend, had gotten a letter from a quote-unquote diploma mill in Marina del Rey that Bianchi had sent a letter to complaining about the work they had done. And we had recovered, or they had recovered, a bunch of paperwork, resume, transcripts from schools in Los Angeles, colleges, plaques that were made out to Dr. Bianchi. And we said, whoa, wait a minute.
This Dr. Bianchi.
So we pulled that stuff out, and we've got transcripts from Valley Junior College, Cal State, Northridge, and Pepperdine, all for psychiatric classes. And then across the top of them are Kenneth Bianchi. They are official transcripts. Kenneth Bianchi. So
he was planning.
He hadn't been in L.A. that long to do all this.
Gosh.
So we went to Valley College first, and we got a hold of the registrar, told him who we were. We're working on a case. We presented him with the transcripts that we had. Can you tell us who belongs to this transcript? And I remember her looking at it and looking at us right away, and she says, well, it doesn't belong to this individual. She never told us how she could tell. She says, I'll be back. She goes back in the office. 10 minutes later, she comes out. She says, as I said, they don't belong to this Kenneth Bianchi, whoever he is. She says they belong to a Thomas Stephen Walker. Bingo. There's your multiple.
Wow.
That's how he developed his multiple.
God.
Tom Steve.
Do you think Buono would have killed again once they separate? I mean, Bianchi goes up there. He has to satisfy his evil urge to kill, and he gets sloppy, right? He doesn't have his partner. He's not as smart as he thinks he is. And plus, getting away with 9 probably made them a little overconfident, Bianchi, when he got up there thinking, But do you think Buono had whatever the constitution, the makeup, where there was going to be more bodies alone by him, more murders?
By Buono himself?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have. I mean, he's killed. So who's to say he wouldn't
Right.
kill again? I mean, that's a question for
Jim Clemente.
the doctors that make so much money
Right.
studying the mind that we know nothing about.
The expert witnesses in a trial.
Or are there more bodies that were never found? Maybe.
Well, that's an interesting question. That's a good question, as a matter of fact, because we talked.
Twice you've given me great ones there. I'm on
No,
fire.
we talked. We talked about that.
Yeah.
And we'd asked.
I wonder.
We asked Bianchi when we were up interviewing him, evaluating him as a potential witness. Were there any other bodies? He said, well, he and I talked about changing the MO. I said, how's that? He says, well, we were going to take girls off, take them to the hills in Malibu, the Santa Monica Mountains, and shoot them with a .45 in the head. I said, you ever do that? He says, no. I said, okay. The one question, though, that came of that was so important, at the very last time we interviewed him up there, we were the last to interview him, Pete and I. Was there any time that you attempted to take a girl off and you stopped in the middle of it for whatever reason? You just didn't do it. And he says, yeah, there was. There was one time. And he describes the attempt kidnapping of Peter Lorre's daughter.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
And he tells us in detail how it went, where it happened, why they didn't do it, because of the photograph in her wallet of her as a kid and everybody knew who Peter Lorre was. They backed off. So thank you very much. It was the same MO that had been used on the other.
Shoot and dead. Shoot
Shoot
and a victim.
So 100%. we found her. We identified her and found her, and we told her we're working a case. Is there any time, she's in and out of Hollywood, that you were on the streets or stopped by police that was unusual? Right. And she says, yeah, there was one time in Hollywood, and she described where it was. She said, I was stopped, I was walking, she was driving. And he says, I got stopped. They told me they were cops. They showed me badges. I gave them my driver's license, my wallet. One of the guys looks at the wallet, says, hey, look at this. Who is this? She says, that's my father, Peter Lorre. And one looked at the other and said, no. Yep. They let her go.
Think about that. Rest of her life.
That was it.
And she's thinking the whole time, oh, it's good to be a celebrity's kid. Yeah. I got off for this. And she got the luckiest break.
Nepo baby comes in handy for sure. Saves your life.
And then she eventually identified Buono strictly by mistake. Okay, by coincidence. She was at county jail. We had Buono in custody by then. Okay, he was in county jail. She was visiting a friend that was in custody at county jail on a weekend. Okay, so she's waiting in line. She gets her pass. They tell him, when you get your pass, they say, he's in C3 or C7. She's walking down the aisle, and she's looking at the number, and the guy's sitting there, the inmate, looking at the number. And she gets to like C6. She looks, and she panics. Buono's sitting there because he just happens to be waiting for a visit, too. And she panics, and she calls us, and she says, I found the other guy. The other guy is in custody. The other guy that was there with Bianchi. And that's how she identifies Buono. No lineup, no nothing.
No wonder this is a movie, one of the most famous cases of all time. And we're hearing it straight from the man that was there that solved it. This is
the whole episode. I've had goosebumps. I'm not joking. This is like amazing. That Peter Lorre's daughter is going to visit someone else in a prison.
How about the fact that Peter Lorre's so famous that two psycho killers know the name? Right? And do a hard stop. By the way, if you haven't joined one of our memberships, make sure you do, because Frank's going to have a few more minutes with him that only our members are going to get. And there's so much info. It's so incredible. So sign up if you haven't. We're going to wrap this one up pretty soon. But Frank, you became a media personality, people knew who you were at that point, right? You're on the news all the time. You lead this task force. You have to speak for this law enforcement division, and you solve this huge case. This launched you into a different echelon, because for the rest of your career, you're going to be known, right? Sometimes it's good to be anonymous if you're a great detective, but you don't have that luxury. Could you sense that? Did Buono or Bianchi ever try to reach out to you because they knew who you were, because you were always in the headlines?
No, I wasn't. At that point, and still, I'm just a homicide cop. Okay. And when that case came along, there had been nothing of a particular instance that they would have known anything about who any particular homicide cop was.
Yeah.
So,
right. And that's the last thing you really want. You don't want your face, but you want to,
But he wasn't. He was in front of the cameras all the time.
No, but that's
after that.
You don't want
to. Yeah.
After that, no. That came into play in the Night Stalker case.
Because we find out later that the Night Stalker is impressed, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, because when we sat down to talk to him when he was finally arrested, the same spiel. We sit down. Unfortunately, there were four of us, and usually just two of us, my partner and I, Gil Carrillo. I usually give the spiel. My name's Sergeant Frank Salerno. My partner, Detective Carrillo, and he says, I know who you are.
Can you imagine how surreal that is? You got the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. Speaking of jacked up teeth, we're doing a whole nother episode on Night Stalker with Frank, so we're not going to tease you too much here. But I think the last thing we have to talk about, though, Frank, is, could anything get more crazy or unusual? Yes, the trial. right? Bianchi's on trial. Here's 2 years of my life. I have to give up now to hopefully get this guy convicted.
Yeah, we had a 6-month preliminary hearing. That was number one. Then we had a 2-year trial after the DA's office tried to dump the case, and the Attorney General picked it up. And the reason we had, there's a number of reasons why there was a long trial. We had a lot of victims, so you're talking about a lot of witnesses, family, and all that. But you're also, Bianchi was on the stand, okay? I think he was on the stand 4, 5, 6 months, okay, on a daily, 4 days a week.
Did he try to break out multiple personalities on the stand?
He changed his story that he told us, okay, so many times. But that was the problem. That's why the DA's office decided to dump it, okay, is because they would go over and talk to him. They got too close to him, and he'd just tell another story. What caught up with him is what he told us originally, because we were able to corroborate what he said. We were able to corroborate the fact that they injected Weckler, okay, in the hip, all right? The little tuft of fiber.
Yep.
They put blindfolds on him, okay, and stuff like that. There was the Peter Lorre, Catherine Lorre story. I mean, that was big. This is how they did it. All right, the tuft of fibers out of the chair. Those are all things that only the killer would know.
Unbelievable.
And they obviously they tried differently. Buono, they both had public defenders.
No, on Bianchi, he had a court-appointed attorney up there, and down here, he had a public defender.
Yeah.
Bianchi, but he had already pled guilty.
Okay.
Buono hired 2 high-end attorneys. Jerry Chaliff was one of them. Yeah. And that's who defended him.
Well, we were there last week. We saw these sites. We walked the steps that you did, Frank, in the hillsides where they were dumped, and then 703 East Colorado in Glendale, which is still a functioning business right now. And I'm sure, it's a body shop, and really nice guys that owned it. By the way, we ran into one crackpot, didn't we? Over at Chevy Chase when we were at the Chevy. Oh my God. We'll get into that later. Maybe Kato and I do that for the members. We should tell everybody how nuts this one woman was.
Yeah, for no reason.
Incredible. This has been unbelievable. We could go on and on and on. I'm working on something else on the Hillside Strangler. I ran it by Frank a few months ago and I talked to him on the phone. It's crazy. I'm going to keep working on this story. If it's something real, I'll do it. That's all I can say is it's crazy. But we got Frank coming up for another episode on the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. Gil Carrillo has been in here. Frank was his partner on this. It's another just truly fascinating story that has captivated the world, and Frank was in the middle of it and brought all these people to justice. What a great episode. And I know there's so much more we could talk about, but it's going to be on that documentary, too, that you're going to be in.
It's a 4 one-hour sessions. Bianchi's going to be on it.
Wow.
Telling his little bullshit story, pardon my language. But, there's some surviving friends, family that are interviewed. There's an individual that has been taking up Bianchi's side of the story, doesn't believe that Bianchi committed them. Bianchi sold him on the story. It won't, So that's
a good preview. Great. You're gonna have everybody's gonna be watching that. Load it up. Get into the comments how much you appreciate Frank, how great he is. Frank, you're a legend. We appreciate you. This was an awesome episode. Another cop, lieutenant, detective that you've talked to that wasn't interrogating you about some other crime that lasted over a year for a trial too, huh? How great is this? Isn't it awesome?
Honestly, this has been amazing.
Yeah.
And we have more to come with this other story, but it's just how. I guess hearing the story firsthand from Frank of the Catherine Peter Lorre's daughter, Catherine Lorre, is that her name?
Yeah.
How just that no one I didn't know that, and the was the blindfolds on the eyelid.
Yeah.
All this and just we don't have time for this, but I just wonder what it was like for the parents of who lost. I don't know if the streetwalkers had their parents show up or whatever, as part of the witnesses and talking about their kids. But like a 2-year trial. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Mine was a year that I was involved
I'm-
in it. It seemed like forever.
I'm really
So-
looking forward to the MGM thing. That'll be great. And by the way, a few bonus questions with Frank for members only. So that's going to be awesome. I can't wait to dive into the Night Stalker story. I want to find out who was the good cop or the bad cop, you or Gil. We got to get to the bottom of that on the next episode. Hey, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Listen to this on the audio channel if in your car, because there's so many details, and Frank's such a masterful storyteller. It'll take you back to that time. Go back and watch our episode where we visited all the sites for the one and only Kato Kaelin and
Yes.
Frank Salerno, who's going to be here with us for one more episode. Zeus back there, don't screw this up. If you didn't hit record, me and Frank and Gil and Tom Lang and maybe a few other people are going to come visit you, Zeus. Thanks for watching, everybody. This is Tom Zenner Scandal, 1 Degree of Scandalous, and I will see you very, very soon.